I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The New American. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Dr. Bill Lile. Bill Lile is a board certified obstetrician and a gynecologist. He has currently in Pensacola, Florida, where he is a doctor, and we're looking forward to talking to you, sir. The more medical men we can talk to, the better. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
Let's talk a little bit about masks. I mean, on the one hand, there's just so much confusion. You're a doctor. I mean, you deal with this stuff on a daily basis in your hospital. What's the what do we actually know for sure that we feel like we're on solid ground with, as opposed to what a lot of the mythology and politics that's going on here?
What we know for sure is that we have no consensus as far as the benefits, risks of wearing a mask. What do I know? I've been wearing a paper mask in the OR for 25 years, treating and operating on patients that have hepatitis C, hepatitis B, HIV. I get tested on a regular basis. After every surgery, I can look at my glasses, I can see droplets of blood, and to this date, I still haven't, acquired any of those infections. There are so many different masks. There are surgical masks, there are N95 masks, there are respirator masks, there are people who are just using a sun guard, a neck gaiter, above their face, but they're also wearing the same mask for days and days and days. When we're finished with our mask for that surgery, number one, when we're operating, we never touch our mask. Once you gown and glove and your mask is on, you never touch it, because then you would have just contaminated your mask. So I think the type of mask, the way it's used, is really key as far as whether an infection can be transmitted through the air. The other thing, if you think of a tiny viral particle, it's always going to be smaller than the pore of the mask, but the particle is also not going to be traveling isolated. A 5-micron virus particle is not going to be by itself. It's almost always going to be in a drop of water or saliva. Kind of like if I were to take a little drop of ink and look at it under a microscope, I would see tiny little particles moving around called Brownian particles. They're in the fluid. Now, if I were to put a drop on your palm, you would see the ink. But if I just took a simple paper towel and put it over your palm and then dropped it on the paper towel above your palm, it would not reach your palm. So is this the be all that end all? No. Do we have all the answers? No. Is it being used as a political tool, like so much of this is? Yes. Can we safely, have our God-given right to gather peacefully and worship together and vote? Yes, we can. The most likely way that this is transmitted is by the hands, and touching something, contaminating your hands, and then touching your own mouth. So everybody's going to have to make their own decisions, but I hate having people's rights taken away and being yelled at and criticized just because they're not wearing a mask like somebody else thinks they should.
Yeah, the politics here is galling when you've got some of the biggest scolds out there. People like de Blasio in New York, Andrew Cuomo, you've got the mayor of Los Angeles screaming that, we've got to shut down church services. We can't have people call off all professional sports, no school in the fall for kids, and yet they'll turn around and you've got thousands of protesters in the street just rallying, screaming at each other, and that seems to be somehow immune? Or is this one of those things where they're willing to risk it because the politics are correct? I mean, is it fair to say that rioting is as dangerous as anything else as far as that goes?
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy how you can gather, but then you say there was a huge gathering of people protesting that it would not be safe for them to get in a line and vote. Meanwhile, they're gathering by the hundreds. Even we see people. I saw a guy on Interstate 10 riding his motorcycle, just flip-flops, shorts, no shirt. He has no helmet on, no leather, but he had his mask on doing 80 miles an hour on Interstate 10. So the mindset is a little bit confusing.
So you're a doctor. When you and your family, when you guys go out, what do you do? What kind of mask do you prefer? And what other precautions might you take as a doctor out in the world, knowing what you know?
Sure. Well, we prefer to wash our hands as opposed to using a sanitizer. Soap and water kills viruses. So that's the first step. And then when it comes to getting to whether it's our dinner table, we do wipe down our own instruments. I mean, I worked in the wait as a waiter all through college. So, we will take a sanitizing cloth and just wipe down the knife, fork, spoons, things that we're going to be handling. I just think that's prudent. We don't go out a whole lot because it is such a hassle. Around in our area in Florida, if you're going to be eating a meal, you don't wear a mask of any kind. We prefer, our town doesn't have any requirements. I don't ride in my car with my family with a mask. I try to use just common sense, and here at the hospital, it's mandated you have to wear a mask. So, if you're being employed and your employer says, just like wearing a uniform, I can't, wear whatever I want here at the hospital or in the OR. I have to wear the uniform, just like if you work at McDonald's, you can't wear Burger King's uniform. So an employer, I think, has that right as far as what you need to wear. But we also change our masks. You would never see a dirty mask. And when we're wearing something as a family, it's one use, and these are disposable, and disposable means single use, and you don't throw it on the floor, just like you don't have a dirty diaper and leave it in the parking lot. You dispose of it and you get a fresh one. You won't reuse a disposable diaper. You shouldn't be reusing disposable masks.
So besides, people wearing their masks too long, the same mask, not changing them, not taking care of that, what would you say would be some of the bigger mistakes people make when they're going about trying things that they're doing they think to protect themselves that really may be harmful? I've heard most recently that the neck gaiters, some people seem to suggest that they may be even more dangerous than not wearing masks. How does that work?
They did a spray test with that, and it seemed that since they're mostly made out of a synthetic material, instead of absorbing the liquid, which could potentially have a virus in it, they, allowed it to disperse through the mask when it was forcefully pushed through the mask. I mean, I've worn the same paper surgical mask for 25 years in the OR, sometimes, during an 8-hour surgical day. Now, I walk in, I never touch it. I take it off. When I go back in the OR, I wear a fresh one. I think the biggest error is that people will have a mask that they have literally been wearing for days, and they are repeatedly touching the mask. So, it's important that the mask fits you properly. You don't want to touch a contaminated door handle and then every 30 seconds be adjusting your mask. You're just transferring what might have been on that door handle over there, and now you're just coating your mask with it. So proper use is really important, and all the data is just apples and oranges, and there's no uniformity or this is what you need to wear. Now, when I go into the OR and we have every patient who comes into our hospital gets screened for COVID-19. Doesn't matter if they're in labor, C-section, surgery, everybody gets screened. And if it's known to be positive, especially if they're going to be getting general anesthesia, then everybody will wear a surgical fitted N95 mask. But that's a totally different situation. And you're not going to see people wearing qualified N95 masks in general public because you cannot barely communicate and talk with them on. It's a challenge enough in the operating room to give orders and requests.
What about these shields we say? Is it possible for individuals to keep them clean enough every day to reuse them, the plastic shield that we see, or are you just splattering a shield with more of that stuff?
A shield, I think, is a good idea, and there isn't any evidence that it is better than the mask alone. The recommendation is if you're going to be using the shield, great, but also in conjunction with a mask. And again, my glasses after surgery, always have little droplets of blood. If I hold them up to a fluorescent light, I can see the little droplets. Soap and water, I'm not going to use disposable glasses and throw each pair of glasses out after I use it. So if somebody wanted to clean a shield, they are able to be cleaned, but they've gotten so inexpensive that people don't have to be wearing them for days and days and days and re-cleaning them.
We've got about 1 minute left in this segment, and I'd like again to hear from you, if you don't mind, as a doctor, as somebody who faces these kind of risks every day, long before COVID came around. Talk about the freedom issues here as well. In your mind, where do you as a professional physician, where do you draw the line between what is acceptable restraints on our liberty and what's not?
Well, first of all, our rights don't come from government. Our rights came from God, and it's the duty of government to secure and protect and defend those rights. And especially when you look at our Constitution and you look through even the First Amendment of our Constitution, you can see that there were peaceful assembly is a right to religion, press. These are rights given to us by God that are clearly laid out in the Constitution. And when those are being impinged, then I've got a real problem. These are the way that we have established our Constitution and established our freedoms, where it was clearly laid out that we can peacefully assemble, we can practice our religion, and when that gets blocked, then we have an issue.
Dr. Bill Lile, thank you for your time today very much.